Yeah, just I'm going to do it this way.
Okay. Steve, I'm getting a lot of feedback. Can you go on mute, please?
Yeah, I'm going to go on, and once I just
Okay.
getting it together.
Thank you. Members of the public who are joining will be getting started shortly. Thank you. We have a few members of the public still joining, so I'm just going to wait a moment until we have everyone admitted into the room. And we'll be getting started shortly. Thank you for joining us this evening. All right, it looks like everyone has joined the room, so we might as well get started. It's 4:30. Good afternoon and welcome to everyone. My name is Eileen Decker and I am the president of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Welcome and thank you for attending our virtual forum today. We recognize that these are especially challenging times for everyone. The fires in California and the resulting smoke have impacted many. And this alone would present many challenges, but combined with the fact we are in the midst of a dangerous and persistent pandemic that has impacted the health of many and the economy and the economic security of many, we know these are trying and stressful times. So we sincerely hope that everyone, along with your family and friends, are staying safe and of course, staying healthy. Of course, the pandemic and social distancing also means that circumstances do not allow us to meet in person and have a more direct and far more personal conversation on police reform measures that the Commission should consider. We are sorry that that is the case, and we hope that circumstances will change soon so that we can meet in the very near future. I am joined this afternoon by my colleague on the Board of Police Commissioners, Steve Soboroff. Other members of the Board of Police Commission will attend future forums, or some of them have already attended past forums. In fact, Commissioners Dale Bonner and Shane Murphy-Goldsmith have attended past meetings, and Lou Calanche, our newest member of the Commission, just sworn in this month, is expected to join us at a future meeting as well. This evening, Commissioner Soboroff and I are also joined by Mr. Richard Tiefenk, the Executive Director of the Commission, who is an invaluable member of our team and assists us in doing all of our work. There are also several Police Commission staff members, including Maria Silva and Rebecca Munoz, who are here this evening, along with others who are working to allow us to offer this virtual meeting. We thank them all for joining us and for assisting us today. We are also joined this afternoon by members of the Advisory Committee, the recently reformed Advisory Committee on Building Trust and Equity. If you're not familiar with this group, it is a group of people convened to assist in accelerating the work of the Police Commission. And today we are joined by Rasha Shields. Ms. Shields is a partner at the law firm of Jones Day. She is also president of the Arab American Lawyers Association of Southern California, and I'm pleased to say agreed to serve as one of the co-chairs of the Advisory Committee. We're joined also by Pastor J. Edgar Boyd, who is present this afternoon as well. He is an individual known by many, the leader of the First AME Church, who also founded this South Los Angeles Community Development and Empowerment Corporation. And he has served on the board of the State Racial and Identity Profiling Advisory Board. We're also joined this evening by Mr. Dwayne Lyons, a former attorney in the United States Department of Justice and a recipient of a commendation from the United States Attorney General for his work on civil rights prosecutions of officers involved in the Rodney King case. Last but not least, we are joined this evening by Mark Yohalam, a former attorney in the U.S. Department of Justice, who also worked on numerous public corruption cases. I thank all the members of the advisory committee for accepting the invitation to serve, and to each of you who are attending this evening. Not all of the members of the advisory committee are present this evening. At each of these forums or listening sessions, a different combination of members of the commission and members of the advisory committee will attend, all of whom have access to the recordings of these meetings. With respect to the advisory committee, there are 16 people in total on the committee. They represent a coalition of policy specialists, legal experts, and community leaders who I have charged with assisting me in conducting a comprehensive review of LAPD policies and procedures and delivering to the Police Commission recommendations for additional reform. In short, I've asked them to assist in accelerating the work of the Police Commission. Their efforts are compatible with and complementary to the ongoing efforts of the Commission in doing its oversight of LAPD. Specifically, I've asked the Advisory Committee for their assistance in 5 areas: a review of discipline and accountability, assessing current policing reform proposals that are being considered throughout the country, evaluating the implementation of past LAPD reform proposals, examining LAPD's recruitment, hiring, retention, and training process, and analyzing data collection and retention practices. We recognize, of course, that these are not the exclusive areas that are important for police reform, but they are each independently and collectively important for mapping out the future work for the Commission in its oversight of the LAPD. And these are areas that I believe and hope that in the weeks and months ahead, significant progress can be made. Not coincidentally, these are also the areas that we asked all of this evening's speakers to address. We look forward to hearing from all of the speakers. By the way, I should add that at each of these 5 forums that have been designated for community meetings, we have a different number of people scheduled to speak. We've tried to accommodate everyone's schedules as best as we can. Some of the later sessions, perhaps naturally, have more people scheduled than the earlier ones. And some speakers have had to reschedule to a later date. And we understand that many people's commitments change over time. And we hope by the end of this series of meetings, by the time it is concluded, we will have fit everyone in. And we hope that we receive a robust cross-section of opinions and ideas representing a wide cross-section of the community. So this is, I think, as you know, the 3rd in a series of 5 community forums that have been and are scheduled. We're here this afternoon and have been here on Thursday evenings throughout this month because this is a very important moment in time. And we're here because the last few months have highlighted what many people have said for a long time, that more must be done and that enough has not been accomplished in the area of police reform. The Board of Police Commissioners is committed to doing more. And as I have quoted before, President Obama, who once said, "When any part of the American family does not feel like it is being treated fairly, that's a problem for all of us. It's not just a problem for some. It's not just a problem for a particular community or a particular demographic. It means we are not as strong as a country as we can be. And when applied to the criminal justice system, it means we're not as effective in fighting crime as we could be." So as we come together this evening and in future meetings throughout September and into October, we should focus on reforms that will help ensure that every person in Los Angeles feels they are being treated fairly and equally. These forums that are scheduled in the weeks ahead and the work of the advisory committee, along with the ongoing work of the Police Commission, are an effort to achieve that result. We know we have much work to do. These forums are just one part of that process. The forums are designed to be listening sessions. We seek to hear your ideas in the 5 areas I highlighted. For that reason, we will not be asking questions this evening, even though I know we all have many questions. But it is far more important at this period of time that we take time to listen. And we feel it's very important we listen to your ideas on police reform. In addition, for those who do not wish to speak, we have opened up an email address for those who wish to offer their written ideas and suggestions. The email address is Police Commission Advisory Committee That's all one word, Police Commission Advisory Committee at lapd.online. As we begin tonight, and as I have begun each session, I open by reflecting on a passage from the 2015 report on the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing. It read as follows: trust between law enforcement agencies and the people they protect and serve is essential in a democracy. It is key to the stability of our communities, the integrity of our criminal justice system, and the safe and effective delivery of policing services. Now, there are many older reports that also cite to and highlight the importance of building trust, addressing systemic issues, and ensuring that all members of our community feel they are safe and are receiving effective policing services. And that is a matter we must all work on together in order to be successful. I do hope tonight and throughout this series of listening sessions bring us closer to achieving that goal. Now I'll ask the Secretary of the Commission to call up our speakers one at a time. A quick note to all speakers. First and foremost, thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you for presenting. When you are brought up to the screen, you will have 10 minutes on the clock to speak. You've been advised of that ahead of time. You can use all or part of that time. At the 1 minute mark, if I don't get the sense that you are slowing down and wrapping up, I will interrupt you and let you know that you have 1 minute to speak. And in fairness to everyone who has signed up to speak previously and in the future, we have a number of speakers this evening and we look forward to hearing from you. With that, I'm going to ask the Secretary, sorry, Commissioner Soboroff.
Hi, I just wanted to take a moment also to welcome everyone and thank you, President Decker, for going through this process. The process of police reform is not new, especially in Los Angeles. Since the consent decree, the Christopher Commission, and many other issues, the Los Angeles Police Department has been a reforming department and has reformed substantially since that period. Even though we're still not under the consent decree, we probably operate under your leadership and under Chief Moore's leadership, even a stricter way than the consent decree. What I want to say, there's 17,000 police departments in America, and not all of them are at the same level of reform. There are 750,000 police officers in America, and not all of them have been trained in the same way, are surrounded by the same rules and regulations and situations. As we move into this, I sort of see what you're doing, Commissioner Decker, as another consent decree, another Christopher Commission. As we move forward, as policing itself is changing, what is expected of public safety, things that other people would like to be doing that probably can be better done by other people, dealing with mental health issues, dealing with drug issues, dealing with people experiencing homelessness. And so I look forward, and I think that this process is a great process to listening, to being a part of this, and to creating our next step of reform. And 10 years from now, there'll be another group here saying, okay, well, they've gone through 30 years of reform, and now it's time to keep looking forward. This process will never end and should never end. And I'm pleased to be a part of it for this small part of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Soboroff, and thank you for joining this evening. Madam Secretary, could you call up our first speaker, please?
Our first speaker is Brian Hoffer, Chair of the City of Oakland Privacy Commission.
Welcome, Mr. Hoffer. We'll give you a moment to get situated. Welcome.
Great, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Well, thank you, President Decker and fellow commissioners and advisory members. I really appreciate this opportunity As you just heard, my name is Brian Hofer. I'm the Executive Director of Secure Justice, which is a nonprofit located in Oakland, but we do work all over the country on surveillance and data security related matters. And I chair the City of Oakland's Privacy Commission. Over the course of the last few years, we've been contacted by a number of folks in Los Angeles that have become aware of the work that we've been doing in the Bay Area, specifically around surveillance technology and the impact it could have in the community. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to walk you through a PowerPoint to discuss, in the time that we have here, a surveillance vetting framework. We have 7 such ordinances in the greater Bay Area. You probably were at least aware of the most recent one in San Francisco, which got a lot of attention because it also prohibited facial recognition. The previous 6 ordinances had no such bans. But the model is what I want to talk about as something that LA should consider. I think it's very practical. As someone that has a front row seat, I believe it's been working for all the departments. It does apply to more than just the police. As we head into smart city type applications and so forth, we didn't want to just limit our oversight to just the police. So I just wanted to make that clear that it does apply to all city departments. In addition to the 7 in California, there are 13 more of these outside, focused primarily in the East Coast and now getting into the Midwest. And your colleagues in San Diego may be joining us very soon. They recently cleared committee with a Privacy Commission surveillance equipment combination. So we're hopeful that they'll join us here as well. If you could forward, please. If you could forward to the next slide.
Madam Secretary, there we go. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So with perfectly terrible timing, 2 weeks after Edward Snowden hit the front pages, the City of Oakland publicly proposed a surveillance system that would be a combination of the port and city, 700 plus cameras, even back in 2013, talking about facial recognition. It would aggregate the data from all these different systems. As you can see from some of the logos on the slide, they intended to share with fusion centers and federal departments. So with Snowden and Occupy in the background, this was a perfect storm, really in a city with a strong activist history. We built a coalition to oppose this project because it had no use policy. There were no use policies in Oakland at all for any of our surveillance technologies. They clearly weren't taking the impact seriously. And as a result of our opposition, we got a temporary privacy commission that tasked a group of citizens with writing the first policy. And I served on that. And then we eventually got the city to turn it into a standing body and create the framework that we knew we needed. We knew this wasn't going to be a one-off approach. We needed to streamline and make consistent the approach in vetting. And the ACLU came out with a rather elegant model that we adopted. If you could go to the next slide, please. Oh, we're on the PowerPoint, not the PDF. Just go ahead and click forward a couple times until the full text is on the page. Thank you. So what it does is it establishes a process of thinking before we act. It requires mindfulness right up front. This is the problem with this big project in Oakland. We built it and then decided to write a privacy policy after the fact, when many of the features had been ultimately rejected by the city council. So for every proposal, for every technology, either new or existing, you have to create an impact report and a proposed use policy. And these two work in tandem during the review process. Ideally, any red or even just yellow flags that you identify in your analysis would be mitigated by the policy that you're proposing. For example, geospatial data points. we can identify folks with a 95% plus confidence rate if we have 4 or more separate points. So you figure like license plate scanners. Well, in a year, you could probably get that easily, especially with the ubiquitous use of license plate readers. But if we shorten that retention limit down to maybe 30 days, maybe you're only collecting 2 or 3 points on a person, and you won't have enough data to identify them. So we look for practical ways to reduce the potential harm, the potential invasiveness from such technology, while still being able to use the good parts, the non-controversial uses that allow us to solve crimes. The definition, as you can see, is very broad. We did that on purpose to future-proof it. And what you don't see here is that we have an excluded items list. So for non-controversial things or equipment that might meet the literal definition here, but we believe the concern was just too remote or even non-existent, we just specifically exclude those items on a case-by-case basis. So that was the most practical way to prepare for all the future technologies coming forward at us. If you could go to the next slide, please. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you. And so this is the basic sequence. Staff would come to me and say they want to acquire something new. I put them on the agenda. Each proposal comes with the impact report and the use policy. We work with staff to identify maybe deficiencies as to both compliance with the ordinance or maybe just things they didn't consider. We are supposed to be subject matter experts. We have a variety of skill sets on the commission. And so a lot of what we do is educating and just drafting with the staff. We are an advisory body. We make recommendations to the council, which retains ultimate authority on all issues. And we have to make the same determination that you see in that 5th column that the city council has to make, that the benefits of using this equipment according to the proposed use policy will outweigh the costs both to civil liberties and fiscal. Some of this technology might not be so concerning from a civil liberties perspective, but the financial component might be more critical. If it's unproven technology, if there's no data to support its efficacy, then that becomes the focus of the conversation, sometimes more than the invasiveness of it. For every item that's approved, it's on an annual basis. So this isn't just approve and forget about it. We want to have ongoing oversight, partly because we want to build trust. The point of this framework was really to try to repair relationships, to eliminate suspicion and conspiracy theories, to really let the public know how this equipment is being used and hopefully that it's being used appropriately. If you could go to the next slide, please. Let's go ahead and skip this one due to time, please. If you could go to the next. So here are the enumerated categories that are listed in both the impact report and the use policy. I'd say on average, these documents are 3 to 4 pages. It's not a huge administrative burden. Most of these drafts are getting approved in 2 meetings. We've had some of the more controversial ones or just more technically complicated that have maybe required up to 4 meetings. But generally a couple meetings we're getting these done and we're forwarding them on. If we could go to the next slide, please. And then this is the ongoing oversight. Every year they come back, we look at the data provided in these categories. Ideally, it demonstrates good behavior, no violations, might also inform policy decisions. Maybe that 30-day license plate reader retention we chose was wrong, and the data is suggesting that we choose a different point. And so we'll have more information to make those decisions as we go forward. And then we continue to make the same determination that the benefits are outweighing the costs if we use the equipment according to our use policy. And so far it's been working. There have been no legal challenges, no internal discipline that we're aware of. The audits have been coming back showing appropriate behavior. And this isn't just for Oakland, this is for all 7 of the ordinances in the Bay. So it's worked out very well. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Hoffer. Thank you for joining us tonight. I know you're from Oakland, representing another city and sharing your ideas. And the framework that you use there is very helpful. So thanks for your civic responsibility and sharing with another city. And also because you're in Northern California, we certainly hope you and your family are remaining safe with all the fires and the issues up north. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Our next speaker, please, Madam Secretary.
Okay, our next speaker is Bob Harrison of Rand Corporation.
Thank you. And we'll give him a second to get his microphone open and hopefully his video as well. Mr. Harrison, you're still on mute and hopefully you can open your video. We can see you now and hopefully you can unmute your microphone.
There
There
we
we
go.
go.
All right, technology will save us all and at the same time be the death of us all. I'm certain of both eventualities. Apologies for the slow uptake right there. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be able to speak with members of the Board of Police Commissioners, the advisory committee, and staff. I'll spend my time talking about ways to think about effective long-term change at the strategic level, and also one specific consideration: to transition the Recruit Academy to a blended format to enhance success to create the officer of the future. I'm Bob Harrison. I'm a researcher at the Rand Corporation, headquartered in Santa Monica, California, and Washington, D.C. I work primarily in Homeland Security and Justice Policy, and I'm a member of Rand's Center for Quality Policing. I'm also a consultant to police agencies throughout California. For the past 12 years, I've been the course manager for the California Post Command College, a foresight-based graduate program working to create the next generation of police leaders. I spent more than 30 years in policing, like your executive director, and have worked throughout my career on ways to innovate to better meet the public safety needs of our communities. A special area of emphasis for much of my work is the study of and research into what I would term the history of the future. Where are we headed to from where we're at now? What can we leverage to create a future that looks like what we want versus the one that others may give us? So as many know, Rand has worked with the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and agencies and institutions across the nation on a variety of issues, including emerging technologies, use of force, budgeting, recruiting, and training. In 2010, Rand completed a study of LAPD's recruitment and hiring processes, and we partnered with LAPD on a number of other projects and research efforts for law enforcement. Recent RAND studies run the litany of issues in policing, including the defunding debate, responding to persons experiencing homelessness, autonomous vehicles, and the true cost of crime to society. RAND also authored a 2018 report entitled Truth Decay that deals with the decline of public trust in institutions and of objective facts and research. So in truth, all policing, like all politics, is local, even with an agency the size of Los Angeles. It's an advantage in most instances, but can also be a significant disadvantage as the public may see them as all the same. Like any other public-facing business, though, the police need to ensure their message is in public view and that their work is also transparent. The core problem arises, though, as we look for ways to make policing more effective and more responsive as they create that future. Like public health, climate change, education policy, and other highly complex issues, policing defies easy answers or risk-free attempts to solve what we may see as deficits in their work. The product of the police, though, in my opinion, is not arrests and citations. We're not looking for a tonnage count or to track success in perhaps a traditional way. For me, it's an absence of fear of crime. If the police can be thought of as a part of not only the criminal justice system, but much more appropriately, the public safety system, it will allow you as decision makers and the leadership of the department to start thinking perhaps on a larger scale than perhaps law enforcement. So I'm a systems guy, and this is the first half of the message, the strategic half, being a systems devotee and using it in research. 4 things that people often, especially in heated circumstances and those where answers are being sought, tend to forget. The first is the system you have now, the LAPD of the present, is perfectly designed to give you the outcomes you're experiencing. You may not have intended them, but that's what you're getting. If you want different results, you can't just replace a person, start a thing, change one aspect of the organization and expect the systemic long-term change. You need to work at the system. Second thing is that any action taken to resolve a short-term crisis will inevitably worsen the long-term issue. We tend to fiddle with things or change one thing quickly, which kind of takes the pressure off. In almost all instances, though, that makes solving the underlying problem worse, in part because you take away the tension necessary to make more significant change. Third, in any systems change, there's going to be a lag between the act and observable results, which means we get impatient to kind of go back to rule number 2, where people just want to do something. We need to see something. We need to fix the problem. If policing were that easy to fix, it would certainly have already been done. It's essentially complex, and systems theory, it's called as a wicked problem. There really is no right and wrong. It's effective or ineffective. And finally, and this is where I see a danger today, as some merely call for, well, let's defund the police, or let's do that, or let's hope for the best, that any decision made using judgment and intuition alone is likely to be wrong. We look at the surface, we see symptoms, we fix those. That, though, kind of stuffs the longer-term problem down more deeply, becomes more resistant to change, which means we not only have to apply the same level of effort, but we need to redouble those. Now, as was mentioned by Mr. Soboroff, there's 17,000 agencies in the nation. Certainly, many of them are not as reform-minded. Many of them have not had the scrutiny of Los Angeles. You already have systems-level change in progress. Your community safety partnerships are one example. Their expansion and the outcomes that I think we'll see from that can help guide the profession into the future. I have a colleague who lived for 2 years in South LA to study the neighborhoods and their cultures, and how little they relied on the police or formal government, how much they relied on churches and other institutions to create their sense of community. Reflecting on that as it validates the community safety partnership study and its outcomes, creating trust is really tough, but it's what it needs to actually make the change we want occur. So for me, one area of the many areas we could pick as a starting point is looking at recruitment and selection, more importantly, as they move into the academy. The Basic Police Academy in California has 664 hours of minimum instruction. LAPD's academy is almost double that length. It, however, is still fairly similar to an academy I went through in the early 1970s. It's PowerPoint instead of overheads, but it is still more military outside of the classroom. It is more receiving information and knowledge for the students, and far less role-playing, simulation, applied practice, and the skills we use in the streets than it could be. Now, current technologies, as we're using one now through Zoom, there are virtual reality platforms. There are online platforms that Coursera and edX present that could offer opportunities to transition significant portions of the Recruit Academy to an online format. If we freed up 200 to 250 hours of what is now classroom time, had students complete that before they hit the campus the first day to start the Recruit Academy, it can transform the experience. They'd have ample time to look at the applied portions of the skills necessary to succeed. Those would be emotional and social intelligence, critical thinking, applied criminal law, mediation, counseling, conflict resolution, both de-escalation and escalation. So we start thinking about the possibilities as we build time to build better cops. If we bundle the skills into scenario training and role playing, they won't encounter situations for the first time in real life, much as combat pilots in the military don't go out and fly jets on day one. They have thousands of hours in sims before they go to the streets. As we move into that, it allows the opportunity for your training division to become much more innovative, to think about how do we train people to automaticity, to deal with conflict, to de-escalate, to use good arrest and control technique, to encounter the vagaries of dealing with people who are probably having the worst day of their lives. So as you prepare them more effectively in the academy, we can see much more effective results and much higher retention levels post-academy and field training. It doesn't mean they don't need to be physically fit. They still do. In fact, I think the physical and mental rigors of policing are amongst its toughest long-term effects, as you see the mental health and the well-being of officers being something that certainly should be tended to, can be tended to more as the officers leave the academy and then field training with greater levels of competence, greater levels of applied skills, and greater aptitude for emotional intelligence. So I'll conclude in saying that, Mark Twain, and if you don't have a Mark Twain or Albert Einstein quote, you don't actually have a presentation. But Twain once said that history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. Right now, we're rhyming with the late 60s and early 70s. When civil rights was passed in 65, there was significant funding pushed to community-based organizations, all of which were well-intended, many of which did good work. By the early 70s, though, crime spiked and that money moved to law enforcement, moved to 3 strikes, and that wound up emptying the cities of young men. It wound up in the incarceration levels that we see today. So I strongly encourage you not to repeat the stories of the past, but to build new ones where the police and their communities work together to create safety and an absence of fear of crime. Transitioning the Recruit Academy to develop and hone those necessary skills with the complexity of policing would be a great first step. And of course, RAND stands ready to continue collaborating with the City of Los Angeles as it does with the profession. So thank you for the time. I am right on the dot. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Appreciate your timely presentation, but also the substance of it and the focus on the training, particularly in the academy. Very much appreciate your time this evening. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
Madam Secretary, next speaker, please.
Okay, our next speakers are Bishop Durham, the presiding Bishop Prelate for the Los Angeles College of Bishops and Ministers Conference. Joining him is Bishop Tracy Price. She's the second vice president.
Well, welcome to the bishops this evening, Bishop Durham and Bishop Price. If you could open your microphone and hopefully your video as well. There we go. Your microphone is open and hopefully we should see you in a moment. There we go.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening. I am with Bishop Price, and I'd like to start out by saying it is sad that we are a meal ticket in death. Sad but true. Let a cop do it, he goes on paid leave. Then others capitalize on it in the name of fighting for justice, but remains in square one with no evidence of advancement, but won several lawsuits out of court. I do not own any of the rights to the music presented in the
Excuse me, Madam Secretary, can you hold the clock? Bishop, we're getting background noise. I want to be sure that we can hear you. There we go. All right. And we stopped the clock to ensure that we could hear you. So I'm terribly sorry to interrupt you, but please proceed.
Okay, we had a little background music, but that's okay. I expressed who I am, and again, I'm with Bishop Tracy Price. We're talking about, I lost my spot. Well, go ahead, Tracy.
That's okay. We're here this afternoon, and we're happy to participate as well as to initiate police reform here in Los Angeles. However, we do realize that in order to obtain police reform, we must first learn to respect one another. And in order to learn to respect one another, we have to be able to communicate. And it's time that we do more than just talk about what's going on, but we need to be able to communicate with each other. Do you understand what I'm saying? At this particular time, the police officers need to be able to communicate with the residents and the communities that we're in there serving. Along with that, the residents need also to be able to communicate. And we are not, and I want to make sure that I'm saying this clearly, we're not saying that everything and the problem is because of law enforcement. We also understand that there are times when community members, residents in the communities, they speak when they shouldn't speak, and when it's time for them to speak, they don't speak up. But one thing is for sure, that it is time for us to come together and to start doing some changes. Something has to change. We have to change now. We can't keep repeating the same thing, going back to the drawing board year after year, every 10 years, coming back with it's calm for 10 years and it's another uprising. But it's time for us to really get our hands in and to communicate, to work with one another, to figure out what it is we can do, that we can work together, that we can live together, strive together as a community, and that we can respect and our people will not be in fear of those that are supposed to protect them. Because this is what the situation is now. When you have children and little boys and little girls afraid to go outside because they don't know if they're going to be the next victim. We have serious problems here in Los Angeles, and it's throughout the country. And right now it's a bad time in our country, but it's time for us. I heard someone say a few moments ago that it appears that we're back at 1950 and 1960, but we can't go back. We have to change this now.
And I'd like to add that in order to have reform, it's not only the police department that needs to be reformed, it's also the community that needs to be reformed. We need to be reformed together. We need to start talking to one another. Yes, we have a bunch of meetings, and when we go to the meetings, I'm one of the ones, we go and we high five and we do all this, and we talk and discuss things, but then when we leave the meeting, some of the things that are discussed don't get back to the people that really should be hearing it. Then in addition to that, some of the things that need to be brought to the table are not made to the table. So we need to take off our long shirts, take off the police uniforms, and all of us, along with lawmakers, the police officers union, and we all come into a room, spaced out, and we talk to each other and not at one another. Yes. We actually have dialogue. We talk back and forth so that we can come to an understanding. But we'll never have an understanding if we don't have dialogue. We'll never have dialogue if we don't start respecting one another. Until we begin to make the rubber hit the pavement, we will continue to see the same injustices. As long as we have no trust, no dialogue, and no understanding, our troubles will last always. Please forgive me. People have to get some talking, some listening, and understanding going on if there's any changes to be made. We need to get rid of the us versus them mentality. We need the police out of uniform to come into these meetings. And we're not saying that the police should be defunded, because that's not so. Maybe a little bit more training, then training with police officers and community as one. I think that's a good start. We need clergy to come in. We need the laymen and women. We need subculture. Yes, subcultures, because gang members are a part of the culture. We need to listen to hear what they're saying, what the young people saying, and until then, that's what we have to do. Everybody have to get their hands on the plow. They say that too many cooks spoil the broth. Not in this case. We need all hands on deck. This is not a me problem. This is a we problem. Everybody want to come up with an instant solution. I'm watching my time too. Everybody wants to come up with an instant solution so that they can get the credit for. But that would never happen without the understanding of all parties concerned. Everything must come from we, the people, not just one. If it's to get done, it will take us all to do it, not individually, but it must be done collectively. If we continue doing what we've always been doing, we're going to keep getting what we've always been getting. Just because we have setbacks, we don't have to settle for that. It's time for all of us to come together, put our minds together, put these thoughts together so that we can have a comeback. The people here on this are change makers. So let's work together to start making some of this happen. Yesterday is already too late for some families. Tomorrow is too far away to get started. So today is the best day. Today is the best day to, you know, to get things going. I have a list of names, which I don't have to go through the names of the ones that were unarmed. You know, I'm not trying to call out anybody's names. For some people, some organizations, they say what they're about, but in the reality, they've been doing this for years as well, and we're still in square one. So until we all come together, all sides, and start listening, talking to one another to get a great understanding, until then, nothing is going to happen. So we have to make up our mind that this is really what we want to do, and come together and do what we can so that we can make changes. Thank you. Bishop Price?
Again, we'd like to say again, as we want to make it quite clear that we are in no means, and we by no means are seeking to defund the police department. We want to work together, and we are aware of the great work that's taking place now throughout the country because of the because of the unrest in various cities and things. We're noticing great reform that's going on. We're seeing how police departments, community leaders and residents are working together in various cities, and it's working. And we want to incorporate some of those programs that we're seeing working in other cities like New York, here in Los Angeles, here in Los Angeles. One of the things that I noticed that they have started, and I want to be quickly, is that in New York, they have a program where as all of the cadets and those candidates who are about to complete the police academy, they spend the last month going into the communities wherein they're going to be serving, working with them, getting to know them. So when they come into the community to protect and to begin to work, they will have an understanding and a sensitivity toward those in the community. Those are things that we would like to see happen here in Los Angeles, as well as a lot of other things, and including, as Bishop Durham said, having lay people work alongside and liaisons work alongside LAPD. Again, we want to thank you for this time, and we're looking forward again to working with on police reform.
And we're happy to say that it is some great things going in Los Angeles, because I work with several different divisions. So we'll just say thank you for that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both. Thank you, Bishop Durham, Bishop Price. We know you have many responsibilities and many responsibilities in the community. And we thank you for taking your time this evening to be with us and to share your ideas and your perspective. It's truly meaningful. Thank you for focusing on communications and having specific advice on collaboration and training and community partnerships. So thank you both very much. We appreciate your time.
Our next speaker is Pastor Oliver Buey of Holman Methodist Church.
Good evening, Pastor. Welcome. We'll give you a moment to adjust and open your microphone and hopefully your video. Pastor, I hope you can hear. There you go. Your microphone's now open.
All right. Okay. Can you see me?
We cannot see you yet.
Okay. I don't see where the video is located.
Okay. Madam Secretary.
There it is. I see it now. Okay.
You have it? Okay.
I believe it's open. All right.
Well, there you go. All right. Very good. Welcome.
Well, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to share some of my thoughts on moving forward and helping to make not just the police department, but making Los Angeles a better city for all of us and not just for some of us. First, I would like to say that we need to ask ourselves the question, and I already know the answer. Are we satisfied with the results we have experienced from our efforts by the current police department and police commission? And I believe that all of us would say that we're not satisfied and that we must do more. One of the things I like to say is that I believe we need to revisit how we even choose commissioners. I believe that we have chosen commissioners with good intentions, but I don't think that we've really looked and assessed how to better choose commissioners. And I'm going to share with you my experience. Many of the African-American commissioners that you choose are people who are of high standards and higher standards than many of the people who work who reflect the community and those who you come in contact with most. As a matter of fact, I believe that we need to have some people on the commission that may have committed a crime, may have been to prison, and we need to hear their voice, but have changed their lives, opposed to always picking people who are usually some highly successful CEO of a particular organization or someone who's achieved in business. And I believe if we began to reimagine and rethink the choices of the people that we choose and how we do that process, we will begin to get better results because we will begin to be more inclusive. I don't believe it's intended, but how commissioners are chosen, a great deal of our community is excluded. Also, I'd like to say, from a clergy, I think that we need to form independently of the police commission, a clergy and community council that is equal to the police commission, that will be able to give an independent perspective that is respected just as well as the police commission. And I believe through that, one, we broaden the scope of perspectives and experiences, and then also it allows people to be empowered, opposed to operate from a frame of reference that does not reflect the community or those who are mostly impacted by the decisions that are made. As we see today, and let me just give a disclaimer so we understand that I am pro-police. Matter of fact, I'm a former Los Angeles County deputy sheriff here in this great county, and I know both sides, so I can see it from both sides. And thank God I was blessed enough to be able to be qualified to be selected, and then also after being qualified to be able to complete the academy and to serve this great county for 14 years. So I bring some experience, not just from a person who has been harassed by the police, but being someone who's had to be on the other side and to be able to serve, and not just serving the streets, but also serving in the courts, being able to serve in the jails, which is given a well-rounded perspective of all the assets of law enforcement, and not just one of simply arresting people and penalizing people. And I believe that we need, without a doubt, to change the standards that will allow many of the individuals who are being arrested and unfortunately being killed by the police, who never have an opportunity to become a part of these departments because the standards that you have set are not very realistic for many of the African Americans who would be good police officers, who may have made let's say they may have made a bad decision in their life early on, but because they've made one bad decision, I don't think that they need to be eliminated just because of one bad decision. And I think that we need to think that, what would life be like if I would have been eliminated because of one bad decision that I made in my life? So I'm excluded from a great opportunity, because I believe, and I can share with you, that by being in law enforcement, it is a good and honorable career. But we're going to need to look and see, how can we be more inclusive instead of exclusive? And I don't think that's done intentionally, but we need to revisit that and look at that and see how we look more to eliminate people instead of how can we include people. And on the clergy and community council, it would be a reflection of the community as a whole. So we wouldn't just, I believe that we need to have an gang member on this council, a part of this community, because they are part of our community, whether we realize that or not. And also, as a clergy, I want you to know that one of the most important parts of our lives and our community is the church. And in the last 30 to 40 years, not just the police department, not just the police commission, but in government, governmental agencies have began to eliminate and silence the voice or devalue the voice and the value of the church and clergy. Now, as a clergy, I know that we still have the greatest influence on our community. And we need to revisit and see how we can work together once again, as we did in the past, to bring the police, the community, and the church together to build that new and better future that we're looking for. Los Angeles is a great city. I personally believe it's one of the greatest cities in the world. And I believe that we right now have an opportunity here in Los Angeles to continue to set standards and continue to be leaders in what could be in the best practices when it comes to law enforcement. And that's why I'm speaking today and why I'm here, because I believe that we can achieve it, but we've got to take greater risks than we've ever taken. We've got to begin to look at restorative justice. How can we restore people instead of continuing to only penalize people? And I can tell you from experience that within law enforcement, we have very little things in place that reflect anything when it comes to rehabilitation. But we have plenty of things and policies in place on how to punish people and how to bring harm. Not that I believe that's the intention, but I'm just sharing with you. So we need to revisit the practices. I personally am willing to work with you in whatever way I can. And also, we've got to stop playing it safe. What happens, we have to look at the whole community. But what has happened and continues to happen, we continue to go to the same people, the same institutions, to choose those individuals when we want something done. Okay, who was effective 10 years ago in the community and respected in the community 10 years ago is not necessarily effective and respected today. We need new voices. We need new faces. And we need a new plan if we're going to move forward. And I believe that by you inviting me here, that is what you're looking for. And I want you to know that I'm here willing to help and support the police department as well as the community in any way I can. And I want us not to wait for a crisis to respond. Let's respond now. God bless you.
Pastor, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you for sharing your thoughts. And just so you know, we are not satisfied. The commission is not satisfied. We want to do more. We want to listen to more voices. And you're right, we must reflect the community we serve. And I really appreciate you coming and expressing your opinions. They're very well taken. Thank you for your time tonight, Pastor.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir. Madam Secretary?
Our next speaker is Amr Shabai, Council on American Islamic Relations.
Welcome. There we go. Terrific.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak. My name is Amr Shabai. I am the Civil Rights Managing Attorney at CARE LA. CARE is a nonprofit American Muslim civil rights advocacy organization. We have 4 offices across the state of California, and we have several offices also across the country. Our office is actually based in Anaheim, but we see several counties and cities in Southern California, including, of course, Los Angeles. So our civil rights department is really focused on religious discrimination claims that are facing the Muslim American community. And every year we get about 500 incident reports from local community members. Around 15% of those reports are related to issues and problems with law enforcement interactions. And we have also seen an increase in community members reporting hate crimes, against them and other community members as well. So the issues that our offices deal with on a daily basis in terms of law enforcement and the incident reports that we get arise mostly from 2 issues. One is a lack of understanding of the Muslim community by law enforcement, or worse, a negative bias towards the Muslim community. And 2, a lack of training on how to deal with issues that actually impact the Muslim community. So today I have 3 suggestions on how those can be addressed immediately. First is sensitivity training that the police officers must undergo, and specifically including sensitivity training on the Muslim community, other minority communities, and other communities of color as well. We specifically do conduct similar trainings with graduates from the OC Sheriff Department. And those trainings are intended to address and challenge biases that graduating officers may have about Muslims, and there's usually other community organizations that are in attendance as well, and they work to address and challenge biases that officers may have about those other communities. What we present on obviously is focused on the American Muslim community, and the training goes over some of the basics of the religion, and it also tries to tie in, issues that can be present themselves on a day-to-day basis. Things like public prayer is not a reason for suspicion. It does not give rise to reasonable suspicion or probable cause. It's simply someone, in public exercising their First Amendment rights. Another similar issue is on Fridays. Obviously, this is before COVID. Muslims gather for communal prayers, and depending on the size of the mosque, those communal prayers can attract, hundreds of people. Again, that is not a reason for suspicion. It is not a suspicious gathering. It is part of the free exercise of religion. The training also covers dealing with incarcerated Muslim individuals. Our office does also receive several complaints from individuals who are incarcerated, who have problems practicing their religion while incarcerated. Obviously, the First Amendment rights do not stop when they are incarcerated, and they have issues dealing with religious dietary requirements and getting those requirements. Sometimes even when they do request those requirements, they are not given them. In the month of Ramadan, which is a holy month in Islam, where Muslims fast and abstain from food and drink from sunrise to sunset, they oftentimes have issues abiding by those requirements to fast, as well as getting accommodations for the 5 daily prayers that Muslims engage in. The second suggestion is the development of strict policies and procedures on how to deal and report hate crimes. So again, we oftentimes receive concerns from community members. They're either the victims of a hate crime, they witnessed the hate crime, or a family member has been the victim of a hate crime. Our suggestion is that these crimes be properly reported, and also that they are included in a public database that is easily accessible online, and that's maintained by the LAPD. Oftentimes, the victims of these hate crimes will report to officers that, you know, the offender made this statement, but oftentimes that statement will be will not be taken seriously, or will not even be included on the report of the crime that occurred. Obviously, when those statements are omitted, the crime cannot be prosecuted as a hate crime. It often makes prosecuting the case that much more difficult because it is not properly reported and the statements that are made are not properly reported. This suggestion also kind of just fits into the larger need to ensure officers are properly classifying data and properly filing reports, as well as maintaining public databases of this information so the public can access it easily. Obviously, the public can access or make requests through PRA requests. Oftentimes, those take a long time and they can be delayed. So our suggestion is that there is an online database of this information that can be accessed by the public. The third suggestion is the development of explicit policies and trainings that deal with the Muslim community. And specifically, the one issue that we deal with frequently is Muslim women and their wearing of hijab. Hijab is a religious head covering that oftentimes cover a Muslim woman's hair, ear, and neck if they choose to wear a hijab. And we do receive complaints of Muslim women who wear hijab who are mishandled by the police and have their hijabs unlawfully, forcibly removed. And specifically, actually today, we did file a lawsuit against LAPD regarding a situation that occurred a year ago where our client, a Muslim woman who wears hijab, she was actually prepared to present to the LA Board of Police Commissioners during a public meeting. And during that public meeting, she had her hijab unlawfully removed. She was in line to give a public comment. She was handcuffed and was out of the hearing. And the allegations that she was handcuffed and removed because officers were attempting to remove a speaker who had allegedly went over his time for speaking. And in doing so, the officers handcuffed our client, took her to another room. While she was handcuffed, her hijab was removed and was not returned to her for several minutes, and that was in front of a male officer as well. And this occurred despite her pleas to have her hijab immediately restored and making it clear that the garment was a religious garment and was worn for that purpose. So this incident and many others like it are obviously something that has to be addressed. And it is due in part to a lack of specific policies and trainings and awareness of how to deal with religious head coverings in the various settings and encounters in which police officers may find themselves. So we suggest that policies be implemented, officers be trained on the sensitivity of dealing with various religious head coverings. And of course, this would not just be for Muslim women, but for all religious head coverings, how to accommodate individuals so that the religious beliefs and practices are respected. For example, this can include accommodating Muslim women to allow them to be searched if a search is legally required, to be conducted in private by a female officer. It also includes allowing Muslim women to maintain hijab throughout any bookings and detentions as well. And with the few minutes I have left, I want to touch briefly also on 3 additional areas in need of training and accountability. These areas are not our main focus. They are not the issues that we deal with on a day-to-day, but I think we would be remiss if we did not mention our concern and raise our concern on the following 3 issues. First, of course, is addressing the policing of Black and Brown communities and directly and immediately addressing the concerns and complaints of activists from those communities. Obviously, this commission having these public hearings is a step, but obviously much more needs to be done, as you guys have acknowledged and many of the other speakers have acknowledged as well. Second, officers must undergo training on the history of racism in America, specifically anti-Black racism. How our country's failure to fully address this history has continued to plague all aspects of society, and of course that includes police departments across the country. But having that training and having that awareness is one step in beginning to address those issues and resolving the issues that we are seeing today. And third and last is, of course, some of the stuff that was seen in the media in terms of dealing with protesters and excessive use of force against protesters and explicitly making clear limits on crowd control techniques and things of that nature. So those are our suggestions. And again, we thank you for your time and for listening to our concerns and our comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for coming. Thank you for your time this evening. We truly appreciate it. I mean, you came forward with very clear and specific ideas and suggestions, all aimed at improving trust between the department and communities, but most especially improving religious sensitivity and respect for all religious practices. So thank you very much for your time this evening. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, our next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Deborah Suh, Center for the Pacific Asian Family.
Thank you. Ms. Suh, welcome. We'll give you a moment to get settled and open your microphone and hopefully your video as well. There you go, your microphone's open. And hopefully you can turn on your video as well. There we go. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Commissioners. Hello, my name is Deborah Suh. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for the Pacific Asian Family, also known as CPAF. CPAF was founded in 1978, 42 years ago, to provide services to survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault who faced barriers to getting help because of language, cultural, and institutional barriers. And today, CPAF continues to be the only rape crisis center in California to target immigrant, Asian, and Pacific Islander survivors of sexual assault. We're also the only organization operating domestic violence shelters and 24-hour hotline targeting Asian and Pacific Islander immigrants in Southern California. All of our crisis management and healing programs are provided in English and over 30 Asian and Pacific Islander languages and dialects. CPAF continues to provide these services because domestic violence and sexual assault is still prevalent. And anti-immigrant policies, practices, and rhetoric still persist. And in fact, the anti-Asian hate crimes and incidents have greatly increased since COVID-19 pandemic began. And there have been some anti-Asian rhetoric that was coming forward from some of the highest elected officials in the nation. I want to recognize that LAPD is operating within this larger context of societal context and conditions that have marginalized and oppressed communities of color. But I will focus on the conditions that harm immigrant domestic violence and sexual assault survivors' safety and well-being, which is CPAF's specialization. For example, I responded to a hotline call from a domestic violence survivor who didn't want to get help for fear of negative consequences, including losing her children and being deported. These fears are deeply ingrained, and without addressing them and building trust, we cannot help them. I appreciate this opportunity to raise concerns. I believe getting input from our often silenced survivors is one of the best ways to build trust. So I hope this is an ongoing process, that this becomes an ongoing process with further dialogue, deliberation, and collaboration, as progress is neither immediate nor linear. One area of improvement for LAPD is becoming more culturally and linguistically responsive. For immigrant survivors that CPAF helps and who muster enough courage to seek help, it's important to be heard, for them to be heard. But too often this was not the case. One recurring problem is arresting immigrant survivors after communicating without sufficient or appropriate language support. For example, one survivor that we're helping was arrested after her sister-in-law provided the interpretation to the responding officers. Another was arrested when responding officers mistakenly assumed the survivor was English proficient. She was just agreeing to be polite and not because she understood what she was saying or what she was being asked. These are problems that can be addressed with more cultural responsive training, language resources, and officers willing to change their practice. So I'm hopeful that we will continue to raise, as we continue to raise these concerns, they will become less frequent. The more difficult case was when I responded to a call from a survivor who did not want medical treatment she needed because she didn't want her husband to be arrested and deported to Asia. Because once deported, it's nearly impossible to come back. This means their children will not have a relationship with nor support from their father. So many of the immigrant survivors seek out supports, like many other survivors of color, want the violence to stop, but do not want their loved ones who are doing harm, but still in a relationship, and often the father of their children, to be arrested. For these survivors who do not feel safe calling law enforcement, having options beyond calling the police is essential. This is true regardless of how well LAPD might respond. The County of Los Angeles is comprised of approximately 46 police departments, not to mention schools and other jurisdictions with their own uniformed officers that a layperson may not understand are not all the same. So we support exploring and enhancing community-based alternatives to law enforcement and other community-based initiatives that are being put forward as options. And I strongly encourage you to engage with victim service organizations, especially from marginalized communities, in this ongoing dialogue as you explore these options. I think community support and community feedback is very critical in this juncture. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for presenting tonight and bringing a voice to many victims in our community. We truly appreciate your time this evening. Thank you very much, Ms.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary.
Our next speaker is Heather Cabroni, Defend the LAPD.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Can you open up your microphone and your video, hopefully?
No video tonight, sorry, but here I am on mic.
Very good. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank the commission for allowing me to speak. I represent a grassroots community organization called Defend the LAPD. We're made up of community members who strongly support and advocate for community safety. We're strongly opposed to any measures which would decrease the law enforcement presence in our communities due to the fact that such decreases would pose a direct threat to public safety. We'd like to see the reallocation of the $150 million that were inappropriately redirected. Not reallocating these funds will cause the LAPD to further reduce staffing and eliminate specialized units. The reduction of vital police resources will have catastrophic consequences to the residents of Los Angeles. Some of the LAPD specialized units that will be reduced or eliminated as a result of the defunding include the Human Trafficking Unit, Juvenile Investigations, Traffic Enforcement Education, Gang Enforcement Details, Vice Units, and Narcotics Units. The loss of these essential specialized units will directly cause an increase in deaths caused by driving under influence, increased prostitution activity, increased sex trafficking activity that specifically victimizes female minors, increased gang activity, specifically shootings, robberies, murders, and increased drug sales and use. The city of Los Angeles has achieved unprecedented crime reductions up until these recent defunding efforts. The first duty of government is to provide safety, and this year alone, the city of Los Angeles has already experienced a 15% increase in homicides and a 10% increase in shootings. None of these increases were due to police officers shooting individuals. I'd like to remind you all that the city of Los Angeles already has one of the lowest ratios of officers to community members. Additional cuts to staffing would be irresponsible and dangerous. I hear a lot of talk about suspects who are apprehended or pulled over. The fact is that the overwhelming majority of law enforcement detentions by LAPD are fully justified and legal. The body-worn video has shown this to be the case repeatedly. There's not enough talk about the victims who are directly affected by criminal suspects. The job of the LAPD is not just to investigate, identify, and arrest suspects in crimes. They also have the responsibility to ensure justice for victims of crimes by allowing the criminal justice system to hold accused individuals accountable. It's disheartening and worrisome to myself and others that there's no concern about victims in these defunding talks. I'd also like to mention that almost all of the law enforcement reforms being proposed at the state and national level have already been implemented by LAPD. LAPD has truly shown time and time again to be the most progressive and professional law enforcement agency in the country. They are the example for other cities to follow. The officers at LAPD are perfectly reflective of the community they serve. Additionally, LAPD has undertaken large-scale training for de-escalation, mental health, intervention techniques, crowd management, implicit bias training, and countless other training sessions to continually improve the performance of police officers out in the field. Removing money from the LAPD budget would seriously hinder the ability for them to train officers in progressive methods of law enforcement, and this lack of training will result in LAPD that will not be as responsive to the community it serves. In 1990, LAPD had 115 officer-involved shootings. In 2019, there were 26. Additionally, out of 1.7 million contacts with members of the public, in 2019, only 0.14% of all contacts resulted in a use of force incident, and 0.001% of all public contacts resulted in an officer-involved shooting. We've seen the effects firsthand of proper investment in LAPD trained resources and personnel. LAPD is a leader in community policing, and in order for law enforcement to be successful in reducing crime and for the community to have safety and freedom, the community and law enforcement must work in partnership. The police are the people, and the people are the police. And these defunding efforts have destroyed the morale, not only of the police department, but both the residential and business communities of Los Angeles. As for our group, Defend the LAPD, we have tens of thousands of community members who have joined this group to voice their support for the police department and counter so many elected officials who are calling for defunding efforts, which we all know will jeopardize public safety. The residents of Los Angeles should not feel intimidated to support their police department. However, they do. And the reason why is because their elected officials can't even support the police department due to political pandering. The groups who support defunding efforts, which honestly is another way of saying abolishing the police, do not represent the majority of Angelenos. However, they are very vocal and tend to intimidate anyone who speaks out against them or who supports LAPD. What has the world come to when law-abiding citizens feel intimidated to support law and order and the police department? We can't have a society where your voice can't be heard. Our group continues to grow because Angelenos don't want their LAPD defunded, resulting in fewer police officers in the streets. Thank you again, commissioners, for giving me the opportunity to speak and weigh into this important discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Berman.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Your time this evening and for coming and sharing your thoughts and, of course, highlighting the concerns for victims, which I know everyone is always concerned with. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, I believe that concludes our scheduled speakers for this evening, unless someone else who had scheduled but didn't confirm has joined. I see we have 3 or 4 people in queue who have not yet spoken. Please put the clock at 2 minutes for those 3 or 4 people who have not yet spoken, and I believe they are Nina Royal, Joey Carbone, and Mahoney.
It looks like Nina may have dropped off.
Right.
Oh no, there she is. Hold on 1 minute.
I'm sorry, I need to yield my time. I have another meeting.
Right.
But I agree with everything that Heather said, and I belong to the same organization. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to Joey Carbone.
Perhaps that individual changed his mind, and it looks like everyone else in queue has spoken, and those who did have their hands raised have removed them. So that would conclude our meeting for this evening. We will resume next week, I believe at 4 p.m. We do have a large number of speakers for the next few weeks, and we will continue having these community forums. Thank you to everyone who attended this evening, to all of the advisory board members and Commissioner Soboroff. Mr. Tiefang, thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.